Well, hey there. It's finally time. One day away from release. And to get you there, here is the last 2 chapters of Book 1. The story's been building up to this, with a big reveal in the offing, so without further ado, enjoy. Chapter 6. With the destruction of the infecting seed, it was as if a weight had been lifted from the town itself. The air had begun to clear almost immediately, the dark oily pall that had settled there steadily burning away under the rays of the sun. The townsfolk had wasted no time in re-establishing a semblance of control over their reclaimed town. Runners were promptly dispatched to all those who had fled or begun to avoid the place, proclaiming that the Three Vales once more back in the hands of those who had always called it home. Rion smiled quietly to himself as he began to see the town come back to proper life again, watching folk hurrying about to restore some sense of normalcy to their lives. It was a truly welcome sight for people more accustomed to bearing tools of trade and industry than weapons of war. He saw Bryn and Vama walking toward him and waved as they approached. Bryn clapped him on the shoulder, wearing a broad grin. "I won't lie, I had my doubts. But you managed to burn those away, and then some. You have our gratitude and my respect." Vama, for her part, was more reserved, but she too wore a satisfied expression. She bore the contract Rion had brought, along with a sack of coin. "In recognition of the service you have rendered to us here in the Three Vales, I deem the contract fulfilled. This is the promised fee for a task well done." As she handed him the bag, she gave a brief, earnest smile. "I am glad you managed to find your way to us. Wide road to you, and the sun light your path wherever you wander." Rion took the coin graciously and bowed in thanks. As he turned from them both, Rion suddenly found himself face to face with Balin, who had apparently been standing just off to the side and listening to the exchange. He looked up at Rion and, with not even a slight attempt at a perfunctory greeting, launched into what was clearly a speech he had long been hoping to unleash. "I'm afraid I have little to offer beyond what was already given, but I would ask you to walk with me for a moment." He placed his hand on Rion's shoulder and led him along as he spoke. "Like Bryn, I had my doubts about you, and quite some concerns as well. More than even he could have appreciated, I think." He put his finger to the corner of his lip, for a moment lost in thought. "Particularly when they had placed those manacles upon you. Infernal iron is no trivial thing. I know that I myself would have had no recourse to free myself from those bonds. When that happened, you see, I was sure you had miscalculated, overplayed your hand." The cleric continued heedlessly with his rambling musings, and Rion could only politely nod. "I wondered, truly wondered, how ever would you be able to free yourself? How is it that you had such calm, such command of the situation?" As Balin walked on, Rion suddenly felt his body slow, pushing into an invisible wall of resistance that had seemingly appeared from nowhere, while the cleric continued his stride utterly unobstructed. Rion looked around frantically and belatedly realized that Balin had led him to the threshold of the chapel doors. The cleric, for his part, had by now wheeled around, and was staring at him from just inside the doorway. "And there," he declared, his voice suddenly rising, "is precisely what kept nagging at my mind. No prayer or divine favor can break those bonds, nothing but a truly overwhelming force, or something of the same ilk." He all but spat the end of his words. "So, what were you to accomplish once you gained our trust, Ingratiate yourself, only to break us even more completely when our guard was down?" The cleric was working himself into such a fury that Bryn and Vama hastily rushed over to the two of them. Even some of the townsfolk scurrying back and forth across the plaza began to take an interest in what was transpiring. Rion put up his hands, palms outstretched, pleading, "Please, you needn't be afraid. You have this all wrong." Bryn and Vama had reached the top of the stairs and were shocked to see Balin's face, glaring at Rion with undisguised suspicion. "Balin, what's the matter, old friend?" Bryn asked, coming up to the cleric and laying a steadying hand upon him. "Is there something we've overlooked that has gotten you so worked up? Something we've missed?" "Yes, there is, in fact. Him," the cleric pointed accusingly. "I had just renewed the wards on the chapel after we had cleansed the town center. Fresh as they are, they will not allow anything infernal to pass." He stood up straighter, bringing what was left of his full height to bear. "And he could not pass. Rion backed away slowly, his hands raised, as Balin walked steadily toward him. You are tainted! Who are you, boy? And what manner of curse have you brought into our midst? No, Rion began to plead, but he could not get a word in. Heretic! Balin exclaimed, his accusation finally reaching its climax. As his words faded into silence, Rion's shoulders sank, and he let out a labored sigh. Bryn and Valma, too, were now eyeing Rion with fresh concern, torn between trust in their old friend's judgment and Rion's own just-rendered service. Valma was the first to break the silence, her tone distinctly cold, formal. What say you then, Rion? Is there any truth to his words? She watched him carefully, warily. Rion ran his gaze over each in turn, resting at last on Balin. Taking a deep breath, he spoke steadily and calmly. If you wish the entire truth of it, you will have it. But know that I bear you no ill intent. Promise me that, whatever happens, you will let me finish and speak my piece, and then leave you in peace. I have sought nothing but to work for the good of your community, and I swear I continue to do only that. Surely my actions have earned me that much. He paused and watched both Balin and Bryn turn to Valma expectantly. She had already slipped back into her role of authority, and she acknowledged them with a slight inclination of her head. You have that indeed, she stated simply, speaking for them all. Go on then. You have nothing if not our attention. Rion smiled uneasily, as much to reassure himself as the others. He closed his eyes, and when they opened again, they were burning with a vibrant golden red. When Rion spoke, his gaze was miles away. No, it must be this way. I know, he whispered softly. No lies, we swore. At that, Rion's body became engulfed in flame, fire bursting from practically every seam in his armor. By now, every eye in the vicinity was upon him, watching as the inferno that enveloped his body grew ever more intense. By degrees, it began to steady, with two thicker lengths of flame resolving out from the churn. Starting from the back of Rion's neck, they trailed over each of his shoulders, before connecting and crossing their ends at his sternum. Rion placed his cheek gently against one of the tendrils, as at its very ends, fingers of flame began to gradually differentiate themselves. With a great flash, a human-like form separated itself from Rion's body, billowing out behind him and floating just above the earth. Long, elegant fingers, no longer just of flame, now lay across Rion's chest, and they belonged to something far more astonishing. She rested there, suspended in the sky, glowing and resplendent, with small gouts of flame intermittently bursting forth as she moved gracefully to regard those present. Gasps of shock and disbelief could be heard from all those who had gathered around. She stared at them all, with bright, glowing golden eyes, her long, flaming hair flowing out behind her well down past her hips. Clothed in a robe seemingly aglow with its own internal light, her two great burning wings beat slowly and rhythmically as she hovered aloft. She smiled languidly, revealing a set of gently pointed teeth and pronounced canines, complementing the compact pair of dark, backward curling horns jutting out conspicuously forward through her flowing coppery golden hair. And yet, above all this, a thick glowing chain, seemingly weightless, protruded from between her breasts and snaked into Rion's sternum. Rion raised his cheek from against her arm and looked calmly at the three standing aghast before him, his eyes glowing red gold and reflecting the same light that shone forth from her. You brought a devil into our midst! Balin's jaw could hardly form the words. You poor child, you are possessed. No. Rion and the glowing entity behind him answered almost in unison, their words booming throughout the plaza. Rion continued. You believe you see so clearly, yet in your conviction you're blind to so much. He looked up at her and smiled reassuringly. Her true name is not for me to utter here, but for the sake of introduction at least. This is Malia. Malia simply inclined her head in echo to Rion's words. And no, I am not possessed, not as you would think. She holds no more claim to my soul than I to hers. We are, however, tightly bound, so to speak. Hence the chain, Bryn volunteered helpfully. Belen and Vama's heads snapped to face him, eyes wide, apparently having completely forgotten about the existence of anyone else at that point. Yes, Rion replied, grasping the glowing links briefly and wincing. Hence the chain. It binds our existences together, our fates, and more besides. To what end, then, Balin asked, have you bound yourself to such a creature? Malia flinched visibly at the designation but kept silent, contenting herself with turning her burning gaze's full attention on the cleric. You know the cautionary tales of divine beings, those who erred grievously and were cast out from grace. Fallen angels, they say. Rion chose his words carefully. Well, she's much like the inverse. If the righteous can fall, cannot an infernal entity seek to ascend beyond the hells to which it is bound? A risen devil, Malia spoke, her words crackling with wisps of flame. There is no such thing, and this is a mad, mad folly she has tricked you into, Balin argued. Turn back from this path while you still have a mind and the will to do so. Never, Rion cried out, not while I draw breath, and there is no trick. I myself sought her out. Passion infused his words as he continued. I had to know. There had to be those beyond the infernal veil that strove for something higher, those that sought some avenue through which to find their escape. I would make myself that avenue. It can't be done, Balin insisted. No, it's never been done, Rion retorted angrily. That is not the same thing, and I will see it done. We will see it done, Malia echoed, her voice like the roar of a furnace, as she drew nearer to Rion and wrapped her wings protectively around him. Both our souls, bound together as they are, lie in the balance. As if on cue, a gently smoldering feather, aflame but unburnt, separated from one of her blazing wings and drifted lazily toward the earth. Balin's breath caught in his throat. Rion caught it gingerly in the palm of his hand and displayed it to those watching him, a crowd that by now had only grown. You do not see her now as I first did, a devil in every outward sense, as terrible as all the tales you have been told. Terrible, except for how she dreamed. And that dream is becoming real, day by day, reflecting in how she appears to us. Every day, Malia is less of what she was and more of something greater, fueled by our mutual service. This, Rion held up the feather, which flashed briefly and was gone, is but an iota of proof. A hush fell upon those assembled, save for the gentle crackle like a hearth fire, emanating from Malia's radiant form. It was finally broken by Vama, her voice clear over the quiet of the plaza. If what you say is true, and with all you seem to risk, then the only question left is, why? Hope, Rion said quietly. He smiled, his blazing eyes reflected in the small tears welling up inside them. If we can but do this, if we can show that one like her, somehow damned from her first moment, can truly ascend, how much more does that mean for all of us, as imperfect as we are? Letting his words lie, Rion turned to descend the stairs. He looked back briefly at Bryn, Vama, and Balin, who still stood at the chapel's entry doors. I do not expect you to understand, much less agree, but I thank you for hearing me through to the end. He saluted briefly before continuing. Your contract is fulfilled, so I take my leave. Tend to your home and thank you for your trust. Guard the three veils well. The gathered crowd parted slowly as Rion walked away from the chapel, wending his way toward the town's entrance. As he walked, Malia's radiant form glided forward and wrapped her arms about Rion's neck, the two melting back into one, as they continued out of the gates, back down the dusty path. Chapter 7. With the city gates shrinking in the distance behind him, Rion tilted his head back and smiled despite himself, feeling Malia's warmth wrapped about him, heat waves shimmering above his shoulders. You did well this time, you know. I feel like we're getting the hang of this. More or less, he said to the early evening air. Malia's voice crackled in his mind. More or less? Any less and they'd have started burning you at the stake. You're just lucky I am so disarming. Rion chuckled. Fair point, though I think we're beginning to get through to them. Malia suddenly burst from his chest in a gout of flame and whipped around, bringing her face up to his, her eyes a pair of burning liquid pools boring into him. Even after all the time since their binding, the intensity of her heat still sometimes took him by surprise. She placed her hands up to his cheek softly as she asked, Do you think they will ever truly understand? Except, the day you succeed, and our oath is fulfilled, they will have no other choice. If that day ever comes. When that day comes. And when will it come? She sounded almost petulant. Did people realize a devil could pout? Malia extrish, Michkan exquim. I see that even less clearly than you. He gently placed a finger under her chin, in a motion of tilting it upward, and Malia flashed a toothy smile in reply. Luckily, thanks to you, time is one of the few things we appear to have in abundance. And perhaps patience, Malia offered. It's true. I am nothing if not a patient man. I was not talking about you. And there we go. The first book of the novel, the first of 5. Just a little taste before the story gets properly stuck in. For those of you who listened through the whole thing, thank you so much, and I hope you're as excited as I am to get a peek at this little world I've come up with. Check out the description as it's always there to keep up with me and find a way to order the book if it strikes your fancy. Thank you for all the support and just being here to share the journey. Take care, everyone.